I've already mentioned that you can find a lot of data using a search engine. I find many of the most useful datasets I use with this method. We're going to use 3 of Google's advanced operators. You'll be amazed at how much these 3 short words will help you. Each engine has its own language for advanced searches, so if you use another search engine, you may have to change the search language to get what you want. Each one has a guide to its language somewhere. You can search for advanced search operators. But it has to be said, Google's set of operators is the most comprehensive and arguably the most efficient. You may find it useful to read the guide Untangling the Web, which is a declassified document from the US intelligence agency, the NSA, which explains some of the differences between the various search engines. We'll look for it in a moment. The first Google operator we'll use is cite:. You can insert after the colon, with no space, the part of the web address, the URL, which will limit the Google search to the addresses in that part of the web. Cite:UK would limit you to UK addresses, cite:EG to Egyptian addresses, cite:GOV to US government addresses, cite:EDU to US universities, cite:AC.UK for British universities, and so on. Where do you learn these endings? From Wikipedia. They're called top-level domains. So, if you do want to get a copy of Untangling the Web, the NSA document I mentioned just now, you need to know the URL of the American National Security Agency, which is nsa.gov. So you would search cite:/nsa.gov untangling. It's the second item on the results list, and as I said, it's well worth a read. Sometimes we don't know the title of the document we want, but we do know the publisher and the type of document. Suppose we want to see what else the NSA has released for anyone to read. We could type in cite:/nsa.gov file type :PDF. We should get thousands of results. When we found Untangling the Web, the result included the word declassified. Let's try putting that in to see what declassified PDF files the NSA has put online. cite:/nsa.gov file type :PDF declassified. Thousands of results with some very interesting documents for us to read when we have time. Right now we're interested in data, so what do we look for? Some people publish data in PDF files, but that could include all kinds of things like pictures and text, and data saved as a PDF brings problems of its own. For now, let's look at the 2 file types which are always going to give us data sets we can actually read: XLS and CSV. XLS is the file extension for Excel spreadsheets. CSV means comma-separated values and is the most efficient way of storing data any computer can read. It's a smaller file with no extras, no color, no bold or italic font, just one simple data frame. Let's imagine you want to see how many US government websites have XLS, Excel spreadsheets, attached to them. Type cite:/gov file type :XLS. You'll get about 300,000 results. Interestingly, if you do the same search but change the file type to CSV, you get only around 20,000 results, which tells you that in the US government, federal or local, they use XLS much more than CSV. In some countries, that may not be the case. It's always worth trying both. And remember, so far we haven't looked for anything specific within the GOV domain. If we add a simple word like crime, for example, we start to get much more limited and therefore potentially useful results. While we're on a Google search page, don't forget this button, Tools, which then opens up the option to limit the results to a specific time period. In this case, we can reduce the results to those published in the last year. So, cite: and file type :XLS plus a search word can get you some potentially useful data in a couple of clicks. The third operator can make life even easier once you know when to use it. It's INURL:. The URL, Uniform Resource Locator, is the address of the page you're looking for. Every page on the internet has its own URL. By putting in_URL: in the search, we're telling Google to look only in the URL, not in the page itself. The kind of words which make this search term helpful are words you might not ordinarily search for on their own. Data is the obvious one, but you could also look for words or part of a word that might be somewhere in the URL, you just don't know where yet. Data often comes at the beginning of the URL. It's often worth putting the word data in front of an address. For example, if you correctly guess that the government in Burkina Faso uses gov.bf, it's worth just guessing their data site is data.gov.bf, and you'd be right. But sometimes the word data comes at the end of the address, or even in the middle. So I'd try site:/gov.bf in_URL:data. So, in_URL is really helpful when you look for data on government sites which don't make their links to data prominent. In the same way, you'd try typing site:/worldbank.org and in_URL:data. That finds the World Bank's main data store, data.worldbank.org, but it also finds other things like blogs about data, where data is in the address. It's just not the first word. It takes a bit of practice to get the best use out of these three operators: site, file type, and in_URL, especially in_URL. What I tend to do is start with just site and file type, and then look for keywords in the URLs which could help me later. If you look at the World Bank example, you start to see things you could use in other searches: GDP, tools, data help desk, and there are always helpful terms like report, download, the initials of the organization you're looking for, the year you're interested in, and so on. These search operators come from a site, googleguide.com. We've only used the three which can be most helpful. The full list and explanation is on a handy cheat sheet, which is one of the handouts for this module. As you start to build open data into your journalistic work, you will get to know where the data you need are stored. You may be interested in finance, or crime, or population growth, or economics. We can't cover the search terms for all the possibilities here. The list would never end. You'll have to spend a bit of time learning what works for you and for your specific needs. One search term to be found in a URL is so obvious in the context of this module that it would be easy to forget it: open data. Try it as one word, or with an underscore, or with a hyphen. It's surprising how often it's a term which is not translated into other languages. For example, try searching for in_URL open data and site:/fr. Even though it's not a French phrase, it is a search term within the French domain. So far, we've looked a little at government sites and how to find them with a quick search or by looking at one of the interactive maps we saw earlier in the module. There are non-governmental sites with open data on them. Many do have the word open in the title: open corporates, open ending, and so on. If you're interested in company data, opencorporates.com can save you a lot of time. The site brings together information on companies and their directors from dozens of jurisdictions around the world. The number increases every month. It means you don't have to know the address of the company registration office in many countries. You can just use one site. It also means that if someone is a company director in more than one country, you can find their profile for all their past and present appointments in one place. Open Corporates is just one example of data that has been curated as a service to other users. Recent releases of big data sets like the Panama Papers, LuxLeaks, and the Paradise Papers have been pulled together into databases we can all use. To get started, take a look at the investigative dashboard. The world of data journalism is very dynamic. To keep abreast of new databases being made available, it's worth just searching for something like Databases for Journalists every few months. This will throw up articles where the author lists new sites worth visiting. Another way of getting new ideas is to set up a search on Twitter for terms like open data and #OpenData, and keep an eye on that for news about data you can use. Some journalists and other data experts publish email newsletters which alert you to new data sets and to stories which others have published using data. Especially while you're new to data, these can be a great source of ideas. There's a short list of some of these in the handout for this module, but you can also search for terms like data newsletter to find the sign-up pages.